Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi ala ni'matul Islami wa kafa biha ni'mah. All praise and gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on his blessing of Islam. This suffices as a blessing. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. So I'd like to welcome you on the 25th session. We are at Para 13th and we are doing Surah Yusuf. Inshallah, we'll complete Surah Yusuf today. Few ayahs left and then we'll begin with Surah Ra'd. What you will hear in Surah Yusuf now is obviously the continuing story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. Is moving up to a position of power from jail to he reaches to this high position in Egypt, and then the reuniting with his parents and with his entire family. So let's just begin with ayat number 53. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. And I do not absolve myself of blame. Indeed, man's inner self incites to evil, except those upon which my Rabb has mercy. Indeed, my Lord is forgiving and merciful. So Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam is really not taking any credit. He protected himself. He protected himself from this great temptation, but he's not taking credit that I stayed clear of this temptation on my own. And that's a great message for any one of us. I think what we really need to understand is we don't need to go close to any of these temptations, because it's very difficult to stay straight. So when we are faced with the temptation, the inherent weakness in human nature, that gets exposed. As long as there's no temptation, we don't know how strong or how weak we are internally. But this human nature gets exposed, and he restrains, and his moral victory he's attributing to the mercy of Allah. This is the expression of humility. Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam is expressing the humility that this victory is only solely with the grace and mercy of Allah. Now, quite honestly, there are two extreme ways of dealing with this desires of nafs. Nafs is so strong in every human being. Allah has made this nafs strong, and there's a reason for that, and I'll just cover that up in a minute. But there are two ways to dealing with it, with nafs. First is to either kill it totally, abstain from all the good things, and that our nafs is going to desire. And the other extreme is fulfill each and every desire. Now, successful will be those people who will be able to create the right balance between this. And then they should know what their limits are. Okay, and they don't make this a wrestling match between their nafs. So having a strong nafs is almost like having a very strong engine in a vehicle. Now, if you want to go to great heights, you need a strong vehicle, right? You need a very strong engine. But equally strong, you need an equally strong driver who is able to control this great power that you have at your disposal and keep it in the right direction. And the king said, "Bring him to me, I will appoint him exclusively for myself." And when he spoke to him, he said, "Indeed, from now on, you are honorable and trusted in our presence." The king is very impressed, and he sees this young person comes to his court, and he appoints him to the topmost position in the court. He says, "You are going to be an honorable and trusted person in my presence." He said, which is Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam said, "Appoint me over the treasures of the land. Indeed, I will be a guardian and knowledgeable." Two qualities that he describes about himself. One is that he is Hafiz, and number two, he is Alim, that he is the protector, that he is not corrupt, and there is no dishonesty inside him. And number two, the second quality, that he is Alim, he is full of knowledge. Now, when we are looking to hire people in the professional world, as some of us are in professional world, these are the two qualities we must look at people. If you have read this book by Warren Buffett, which is Snowball, and he talks about the fact that when he hires people, what are the things that he's looking for? And he said, "I look at integrity first, and then abilities." So this is exactly in line with what Quran has taught us a long time ago. Then when we look at people, we need to look at these two qualities, integrity and then knowledge. And thus we gave Yusuf power in the land. He could settle it in it wherever he wished. We send down our mercy on whom we will, and we do not waste the reward of those who do good. Now, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam asks for this post, not because of ambition, not because of power, not because of prestige, but so that truth and justice can be established. I think another extremely important moral lesson for us is that if we have these qualities, if we are knowledgeable, if we are honest, we must strive and present ourselves to reach to the top. Because why? Because only then truth will be established in this world. There is no reason for us to be shy. If we are good, we must present ourselves so that good people can come to the top. We don't need to sit back and relax and think, why, I don't want to really go in and pitch myself on it. Go pitch yourself. If you have that to be able to do the work in an honest way, it is incumbent upon you to pitch yourself up and reach to this high position. Anyway, so coming back to Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, he builds up a huge grain store in Egypt, and so that in the years of plenty he can store all the grain, and that can be used in the years of scarcity. And the reward of the hereafter is better for those who believe and fear. Now, immediately after inculcating that Hazrat Yusuf is now come to a position of power, Quran puts in a word of caution for us, that we shouldn't have this misunderstanding that we are really after the kingdom and power. This is something that we have to. Quran says, look, this is okay. You need to have it from a worldly point of view to establish justice, but the ultimate reward for virtue and righteousness should not be sought in this world. The best reward for the hereafter is to strive and pray for the reward in the hereafter. And the brothers of Yusuf came and they presented themselves to him, and he recognized them, but they did not recognize him. So now we are looking at phase 2 of the whole situation. The famine begins in Egypt and the areas around it, and the brothers who are, come over there, they live in Canaan, they come to Egypt to buy the grain, and they come to Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, who is the controller of all the grain in Egypt. It's been 40 years, and they don't recognize him, and rightly so, because he was a small boy when they threw him in the well. But now he has become mature, he has grown up. They recognize him, and he recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. And also, they never really expected him to reach this high position in Egypt. And when he had furnished them with their provision, he said, bring me your other brother from your father's side. Do you not see that I give full measure and that I am best of the host? So Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam gives them their share, but he expresses doubt about their claim for their 11th brother. So remember that Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam had 11 sons, and one of them is Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, who is now in Egypt. And the 11th of them was Binyamin, and he's still there in Canaan. He didn't come with the brothers. So these 10 brothers came. But if you do not bring him to me, then you deserve no further measure from me, nor shall you approach me anymore. So he gives them a mild threat, right? He's giving them a threat, reminding them that he's liberal, he's generous, but he can also be difficult if they don't bring their other brother, because he wants them to bring the 11th brother. They said, we will persuade our father about him, and indeed we will do it. And he said to his servants, put their merchandise back in their saddlebags so that they might recognize it when they have gone back to their people, and perhaps they will again return. Now, Yusuf alayhi salam wants these people to come back. He wants his brother desperately to come back, and he recognizes that they are not so rich, so he puts the merchandise back, so that this may not become an excuse for them that they feel shy, we're not going to go back because we have nothing to sell. So the reason why Yusuf wants these people to come back is because of his younger brother. So he got the servants to secretly put the merchandise back in their saddlebags. So when they returned to their father, they said, "Oh, our father, measure has been denied to us, so send with us our brother, so that we will be given measure, and indeed we will be his guardian." He said, "Should I trust you about him as I trusted you earlier about his brother?" Well, Allah is the best guardian, and He is the most merciful of the merciful. So he sounds apprehensive, but then he shows his total faith and total trust on Allah. And when they opened their baggage, they found their merchandise returned to them. They said, "Oh, our father, what more can we deserve? What more could we deserve? This is our merchandise returned to us, and we will provide provision for our family and protect our brother, and will have an additional measure of camel load, and this is an easy measure." He said, which means Yaqub alayhi salam said, "I shall never send him with you until you give me a promise in Allah's name that you will bring him back to me unless you are overpowered." And when they had given him their promise, he said, "Allah is the one
in whom trust is placed over what they say. So Yaqub alayhi salam, remember he's also a messenger, he took an oath. He took an oath from his sons, but here also he's not transgressing. And he's saying maybe the situation is beyond human control. So he said, unless you are overpowered, you may be in a situation where you are overpowered and you cannot bring my son back, and that's beyond human control. And he said, O my sons, do not enter from one gate, but enter from different gates. I cannot avail you against the decree of Allah. The decision is only with Allah. In Him I have put my trust, and all those who put their trust should put their trust in Him alone. Now this is a difference between tawakkul and tadabbur. Tawakkul is we have a conviction and trust on Allah. But tadabbur is that we need to do full effort. We need to do our homework. In a hadith, our Prophet ﷺ said, tie your camel and then put your trust on Allah. Do that tying part. And you do it diligently, tie the camel properly, and then put your trust on Allah. So I think from Islamic point of view and from religious point of view, some people think that religion is like the opium for the masses. It isn't. So laziness, lethargy, being disorganized, this is not something which is called Allah tawakkul. This is not tawakkul on Allah. Do what is humanly possible, but remember that the results are only in the hands of Allah. Trust is not on material. Don't think that I put a security system in my house so I'm safe. Or don't think when you're driving from your home in your car and you put the seat belts on, don't think that nothing will happen. What is destined will happen. What is destined will always happen. None can change the taqdeer. This is part of our destiny. This is part of taqdeer. But then see how Yusuf alayhi salam holds this balance between trust in Allah and adopting these precautionary measures. He says, take all precautions, which are the dictates of common sense, common thinking, common planning. We need to be on our guard, but the real protector is Allah. So there are two extreme views that we see often among people, two extreme views. One is some people who completely disregard Allah and they have trust on material. So they trust them. It's the medicine which is curing. It's our work that's actually making us progress. And the other people are just trust on Allah, but adopt no practical measure. And I think Islam provides us a balance that you need to do your part and then you need to have trust on Allah. And when they entered from where their father had ordered them, it did not avail them against Allah. It was a desire in the soul of Yaqub which he satisfied. And indeed, he is a possessor of knowledge because of what we had taught him. But most of the people do not know. So when Yaqub alayhi salam gave advice to his son, he was following his instincts. He was just following his instinct, the human urge. And really, he did not expect that these outward precautions would help them against if it was a will of Allah. And when they went to Yusuf, he took his brother aside. He said, indeed, I am your brother, so do not grieve over what they have been doing. So when he had furnished them with their provisions, he put the drinking bowl in the bag of his brother. Then an announcer called out, O people of caravan, indeed you are thieves. So the cup of Yusuf alayhi salam was put in the brother's bag, but with the knowledge of the brother. So it was with the knowledge of Binyamin and his consent. Because Yusuf alayhi salam desired to free his brother from the oppression of the other 10 brothers who were cruel to him. And maybe he was also reluctant to go back to Canaan. Maybe he was also reluctant, but he couldn't do it openly because this was a just society. Egypt at that time was a very civilized group of people, and he couldn't do under the law that was there. We will see in a later ayat. They said while approaching them, what is it that you are missing? So the brothers now, to these people of the callers, the announcer, they said, what are you missing? Now, there is nothing in these verses to suggest, there many times you hear the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, nothing to suggest that Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam took his servants into confidence, instructed them to bring a false charge against them, nothing. Just they had kept the cup in the bag, and then the servants realized that this cup was missing, and they went for search. I think it's a very simple, straightforward story. There are no spins in it at all. They said, we are missing the measuring bowl of the king, and for he who brings it, the reward of a camel load, and I stand surety for it. They said, by Allah, you have certainly known that we did not come to cause mischief in the land, nor have we ever been thieves. The accuser said, then what would be the penalty if you are liars? The brother said, its penalty is that in whose bag it is found, he himself will be its compensation. Thus do we punish the wrongdoers. Which means what they have suggested their penalty or punishment, that the thief will be the slave of the one whose goods are stolen. So in whosever camel bag or saddle bag this cup is found, he will now become the slave of the person whose goods were stolen, in which case was Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. So they really suggested their own punishment. This was not the law of the land, but there was and there was no room left for the brothers now to raise any objection, because this is a punishment and a compensation that they themselves had suggested. So when he began the search with their bags before the bag of his brother, then he produced it from the bag of his brother. Thus did we plan for you, and thus did we plan for Yusuf. He could not have taken his brother within the law of the king unless Allah willed. We increase in ranks whom we will, but over every possessor of knowledge there is one more knowing. We'll talk about the last part of this ayat, but first and thing is, this was a favor of Allah that Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam did not have to apply the laws of Egypt. And he was able to accomplish what he desired without breaking the law or without committing any injustice on anyone. The last part of this ayat is, over every possessor of knowledge there is one more knowing. No one should feel complacent or content that I am very knowledgeable, that I'm and start to feel self-righteous about it, because for every knowledge, for possessor of knowledge, there are people who are much more knowing than them. They said, if he steals, a brother of his has stolen before, but Yusuf kept it within himself and he did not disclose it to them. He said, you are even worse in position, and Allah knows best what you allege. They simply wanted to vilify their brother in order to disassociate themselves from the Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam brother Binyamin. They said, O Aziz, indeed he has a father who is an old man, so take one of us in place of him. Indeed we see you are the one who is one of those who do kindness. So they suddenly they remembered the oath that they had given to their father, a very firm oath that they would, concerning the safety of their brother. So they go back and they say, take us instead of him. He said, I seek refuge of Allah that we take anyone except him with whom we found our possession. Indeed, we would then be the unjust. So he doesn't use the word thief over here. You know what he said? In who we found our possession, except with whom we found our possession. He doesn't use the word thief at all. So when they had despaired of him, they went aside for consultation. The elder of them said, do you not know that your father has taken from you a firm oath in the name of Allah, and that before you failed in your duty to Yusuf? So I will never leave this land until my father permits me or Allah decides for me, and he is the best of the judges. Return to your father and say, O father, indeed your son committed theft. We did not bear witness except to what we knew, and we could not guard against the unseen. And asked the city in which we were and the caravan in which we returned, and indeed we are truthful. Now the whole story of them going back and explaining it to Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam. He said, rather your soul have made the matter light for you, so patience is most fitting. Perhaps Allah will bring them to me all together. Indeed, it is He the knowing, the wise. Now he uses the word sabrun jameel, beautiful patience. The same word he had used when he got the news about Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam 40 years ago. Now for the second time he also uses the same word. It's a beautiful patience, I will be patient. And he turned away from them and said, O my sorrow over Yusuf, and his eyes became grey with grief, and he was suppressing. So he was sad inside, right? And his eye had become white because of grief. They said, by Allah, you will not cease to remember Yusuf until your health is ruined or become of those who perish. So in a way, the brothers are also concerned about their father. They do love him. I mean, they loved him, but they had no adab. They wanted his unwavering attention, and they wanted to get that attention one way or the other. He said, I only complain of my suffering and my grief to Allah, and I know from Allah that which you do not know. So sabr of Yaqub alayhi salam is being described over here. He's grief stricken, but he's not mourning in front of people. O my sons, go and search for Yusuf and his brother, and do not lose hope in Allah's mercy. Indeed, no one despairs of mercy of Allah except those who have no faith. So Yaqub alayhi salam is a man of knowledge, and he's very intelligent. He recognizes that in this life, no one gives you the merchandise back and also returns the money with you, as he saw when the first time the caravan came back. So he knew that the interpretation of the dream of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam is near. So he demands for his sons to go back and to bring the brother. Now the sabr of Yaqub is very important for us to understand, not being mournful in front of people. There's a hadith of our Prophet where Prophet ﷺ said, one who narrates his affliction in front of people has not done sabr. So the moral for us is that if we have grief, if we have sorrow, we need to supplicate in front of Allah. Because this will strengthen our relationship with Him. It will create an unbrokenable bond, a bond between man and his Creator. So when they came before him, which means before Yusuf, they said, O Aziz, misfortune has touched us and our family, and we have come with poor merchandise, but give us full measure and be charitable to us. Indeed, Allah rewards the charitable. So what a fall, huh? If you look at these brothers a few years ago, they were saying, we are a force, we are a big force. To become poor and to become destitute, we see this in life. In our lifetime, we have seen people fall from grace, fall from high position to low position, as it happened to the sons of Yaqub alayhi salam. And when Yusuf alayhi salam saw the conditions of his brothers, he revealed his identity. He said, do you know what you did with Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? They said, are you Yusuf? He said, I am Yusuf, and this is my brother. Allah has certainly favored us, and indeed he who fears Allah and is patient, then indeed Allah does not let the reward of such people go waste. So we again recognize the kind of noble character Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam has. He completely forgives the past injustice when he is in a position of strength. If he wanted, he could have taken all sorts of revenge against these brothers, right? But instead he's thankful to Allah. And normally people do not forget, especially the hard times that they have been subjected to, people never forget the hard times. But two qualities being highlighted over here is sabr, one, and the other one is taqwa, which is being fearful of Allah. They said, by Allah, surely Allah has preferred you above us, and we are indeed sinners. So the brothers recognize that they have sinned. That's the first step to correction. He said, no blame upon you today. May Allah forgive you, and He is the most merciful of the merciful. So sign of forgiveness is that you pray to Allah for forgiveness. That's the first step. You recognize that this is a sin. You are remorseful about it, and you ask Allah for forgiveness. Now these are very words that were used by our Prophet ﷺ on the day of the great victory, which was Fatah Makkah, when he went in, attacked Makkah and invaded Makkah, and he forgave his brothers. He exactly read the same ayah. Take this shirt of mine and cast it over the face of my father. He will be able to see, and bring all your families to me. And when the caravan departed, their father said, indeed, I sense the fragrance of Yusuf, though you may think me to be senile. Now, Canaan and Egypt are about 250 miles apart. That's an 8 days journey. And this is an extraordinary power that was bestowed by Allah to Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, that he had this ability, and Allah gives these abilities to whoever wishes, that he immediately felt that the fragrance of Yusuf, that he knows that there's something happening and Yusuf is close by. Now, when he said that, I smell the fragrance of Yusuf, what did the family members say? They said, by Allah, indeed you are suffering from an old delusion. Now, look at the kind of attitude that the family had towards their old parents. Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam by this time was very old. He was also blind, right? And this is being reflected in which the wife and children are treating him. Not a very nice way to treat your old parents. And when the bearer of good tidings arrived, he cast it over his face and he regained his sight. He said, did I not tell you that I know from Allah that which you do not know? So sometimes a parent is misleading. It can make us dejected. It can make us hopeless. And sometimes people become so dejected and so hopeless that they stop praying to Allah also. Remember Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, he is a messenger of Allah. He's a prophet of Allah. He kept praying. He kept a strong faith right up to the end. 40 years of praying. And, sometimes we think that, well, we have prayed now for a long time. In 5 namazes we have prayed and things are not happening. But we need to see that it takes time for some prayers to be answered, because Allah, with every prayer, either He's giving a reward or improving our position in paradise. So we need to keep praying. They said, "O our Father, pray to Allah to forgive our sins. Indeed, we have been sinners." He said, Soon I will ask forgiveness for you from my Lord. Indeed, it is He who is the forgiving, the merciful. Now, note the difference between the response of the father and the response of the son. Earlier, when the brother asked forgiveness from Yusuf alayhi salam, he immediately forgave. And Yaqub alayhi salam is not in a position of strength, right? He's being ridiculed by the family. He's old. He's blind. He's almost feeling he's rejected. That's not a very pleasant position to be in. So human nature is that when we are down and under, it's difficult to wholeheartedly forgive someone from a position of weakness. It's a lot easier, and what he's really saying, it will be a lot easier after I meet my son. So after I meet my son, and he says, soon I will ask for forgiveness for you. And when they came before Yusuf, he placed his parents near him and said, enter Egypt, Allah willing, in peace. Now 70 families migrated, came to Egypt from Canaan. They lived happily for a long time. They prospered over there. And then finally there were some internal struggles in Egypt, and then Bani Israel were considered to be outsiders. Then since they had migrated, they had come from outside, they were made slaves by the Egyptians. And Bani Israel would leave Egypt now after about nearly 400 years. But their number multiplied from 70 families to nearly 2 million under the command of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, 2 million. So that means that the family itself grew while they were in Egypt, but also it also included a conversion of a lot of locals from the Egyptian culture to the Islamic culture. And he raised his parents upon the throne, and they bowed to him in prostration. And he said, my father, this is the fulfillment of my early dream. My Rabb has made it to be true. And he was certainly kind to me when he released me out of the prison and brought you here from the countryside, after Shaitan had induced conflict between my brothers and me. So look at Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, he's not blaming the brothers overall. He says the Shaitan had actually induced conflict between my brothers and me. Indeed, my Rabb is subtle in what He wills, and indeed it is He who is knowing and wise. So this is, first part of this ayah is the fulfillment of the childhood dream of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, where he saw these, the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down, and the sajda to bow down, which was done over here, which was discussed over here. That was the ancient custom in Egypt to show gratitude. Now we have this, some people salute. Even now some people bow down like the Japanese bow down. Now in Islam, it is prohibited to bow down to anyone besides Allah. So as a Muslim, our greeting is salam. Now the second part, which is I just reread, is that after this Shaitan had induced conflict between me and my brothers, what is the important lesson is that all these difficulties and dispute, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam blames it on shaitan, who loves to create doubts among people by through insinuation. It's all about relationship building. If we have disputes between us and other people, this is going to waste huge amount of energy. It saps our creative ability. Angry people are far more destructive than constructive. And this is a very unhealthy attitude. Those who are those who are eternal complainers, those who are always angry. Some people have this constantly feeling irritated and angry. Those people who are constant complainer or grumblers or have that have this negative attitude, they will never forgive and forget, and this doesn't do any good to them. So no matter how much zulm has been done on people, this is for your good. And remember that Allah is watching, and when you forgive someone, you get the reward. That reward is reserved for you. My Rabb, you have given me the kingdom and taught me the knowledge of interpretation of events. Creator of heavens and earth, you are my protector in this world and in the hereafter. Cause me to die in submission and join me with the righteous. So all thanks, all gratitude to Allah, shukr of Allah in good times, sabr in difficult times. That's the quality of moment. There is no complacency in Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. He is still praying, "Oh Allah, keep me on the straight path and take my soul." He says, "Cause me to die in a state of submission." That take my soul when I am in a state of being a Muslim. That is of the story of the unseen which we revealed to you, and you were not with them when they put together their plans while they conspired. And most of the people will not believe, although you desire it eagerly. And you do not demand from them any reward for it. It is only a reminder for mankind. And see how many signs of the heavens and the earth do they pass by, and yet they turn aside. You don't need a manifest miracle in order to have faith. It comes through observing signs of the universe and the laws that govern it. And most of them do not believe in Allah except while they associate others with Him. Then do they feel secure that there will not come to them an overwhelming punishment from Allah, or that the hour will not come upon them suddenly while they do not perceive? So while we are in a state of peace and calm and serenity in the life of people begin to feel that there is no need for Allah in our lives. And then suddenly the difficulty and the punishment arrives, as we see it during this time of the coronavirus. Say, this is my way. I invite to Allah with insight, both I and my followers. And exalted is Allah, and I am not of those who associate others with Him. This is not a self-created, this is not a man-made psychology. This is the word of Allah. And we did not send before you as messenger, except to men to whom we reveal from among our people of cities. I'll read this ayat again, 109. And we did not send before you as messenger except to men to whom we revealed from among the people of cities. So have they not traveled through the earth and observed how was the end of those before them? And the home of the hereafter is best for those who fear Allah. Then will you not understand? When the messenger gave up hope and they thought they were treated as liars, our help came to them, and whoever we willed was saved, and our punishment cannot be repealed from the people who are criminals. So the last ayat of Surah Yusuf, and there was certainly in their stories a lesson for people of understanding. It is not a tale invented, but a confirmation of what was before it, and a detailed explanation of all things, and a guidance and a mercy for people who believe. So what Quran is really telling us is that this story is there in Bible. It's also there in Torah. So this story is there in the Old Testaments also. Kufr can unite its forces, it can plot, it can plan, it can back everything with resources, but the plan of Allah works and it sweeps all the plan. Good will win, and that's something that you must have a strong belief. Good will always win in the end. Now let's just begin with the Surah Ra'd, and we will do a few ayahs of Surah Ra'd. Surah Ra'd was revealed onto our Prophet ﷺ in the last years that he was in Makkah, about the same time as the earlier surahs that we have done, which is Surah Yusuf and Surah Hud. So let's just look at the first ayat of Surah Ra'd. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Alif Lam Ra. تلك آيات الكتاب والذي أنزل إليك من ربك الحق ولكن أكثر الناس لا يؤمنون. Alif Lam Ra. These are the verses of the book, and what has been revealed to you from your Lord is the truth, but most of people do not believe. So not believing does not negate the truth. That's the point. Not believing makes no difference. How are people not believing and not following or partially implementing? That's the issue. And anyone who is doing that, Quran says that's just rejecting. That's not just rejecting the book, but it is also rejecting Allah. It is Allah who raised the heavens and earth without pillars that you see them. Then he established himself above the throne and subjugated the sun and the moon, each running its course for a specified term. He regulates the affairs. He makes clear the signs that you may be certain of the meeting of your Lord. So here Quran is calling people, It's a call from Quran. Quran is calling people, observe the creation of the external world. It's a proof of the absolute power and authority of Allah. Look at this universe. Look at the size of the solar system. Look at the size of the planets that we see every day, take benefit from them. Now, the style of Surah Ra'd over here is not confrontational. It's not really about if you don't, there will be a punishment. It's like, let's take a walk. Let's observe nature so that we can think clearly. Look at this beautiful sky. Look at this soothing color. Ask yourself, who is benefiting from all this beauty? Remember that there is no other creation in this planet or in this universe which has the aesthetic sense like man. Only human beings have this aesthetic sense. Only man has taste and conscience to appreciate the dark nights, the starry skies, the moon in its glory, the gentle heat from the sun, and this beautiful nature, world around us. Only human beings. It is he who spread the earth and placed in it firm mountains and rivers and created in it pairs of two from all the fruits. He causes the night to cover the day, and indeed in this are signs for a people who reflect. So reflect upon these signs. Look at the fruits. Reflect upon the day and night. Look how different they are and how similar they are. And within the land are tracts side by side and gardens of grapevines and farms and date palms, some having twin trunks and some having a single one, irrigated by the same water. But we make some of them excel the others in flavor, and indeed in it there are signs for people who understand. Until now, Quran was actually, asking us to look at the bigger picture, the broader picture, and now it's saying step closer. Step closer. The invitation is think about the fruits, not similar, but so different, from the same land, from same water. The taste, their flavors are so different. And that's also true for people, right? People are also different. Some people absorb this wahi, they will bear the fruits, and some will remain barren. That's how the nature of land is also. Some will bear fruit and some will remain barren. And if you wonder, then astonishing is their saying, when we are dust, will we indeed be brought into a new creation. They are the ones who have disbelieved in their Lord, and those will have shackles around their neck, and such are the companions of fire, and they will abide in it forever. So addressed to our Prophet ﷺ, are you surprised that despite seeing so many signs, so many miracles around them, they are still faithless? Well, actually, what is more strange is not that they don't look at these signs, but what is more strange is they are saying that we cannot be raised again, although they observe this life and death every moment in their life. Every day, look at the summers and look at the rains that come after a long drought and summer. How the earth becomes alive, and then it dies down, and then it becomes alive. So this is the process of life and death that is there in front of our eyes. They ask you for the evil sooner than good, when exemplary punishments occurred before them. And indeed your Lord is full of forgiveness for the people despite their wrongdoings, and indeed your Lord is severe in punishment. So when people are warned, they demanded that punishment be brought to them. They said, okay, if there is a punishment, bring it to us, bring that punishment to us now. Instead of asking for guidance, instead of asking for the same, for the straight path, they asked for that punishment. So our response, this is a response to the warning of Quran. And this determines our faith in the hereafter. How our response is on the warning will determine our faith in the hereafter. And those who disbelieve say, why has a sign not been sent down with him from his Lord? You are only a warner, and for every people is a guide. So there is no reason, there is no necessity to respond to every question. Your job is to warn people. Allah knows what every female carries and what is in the womb decreases or increases, or what the womb decreases or increases. And everything with him is by due measure. So this is a general statement about all female, be it a plant, be it an egg, be it an insect. For each ability, potential, talent, development will be under direct observation and supervision of Allah. He knows, He is the knower of the unseen and the seen, and most high and exalted. It is the same to Him concerning you, whether one conceals speech or one who speaks openly, or whether one who hides by the night or goes forth by the day. Nothing is hidden from Him. The knowledge and the power of Allah are such, there is nothing hidden from Him. There is nothing by the night or by the day. There is nothing which is concealed or nothing which is open that is not in the knowledge of Allah. For each one are successive angels in front of Him and behind Him who protect Him by the degree of Allah. Indeed, Allah will not change the condition of people until they change what is in themselves. And when Allah intends misfortune for a people, none can avert it. And besides Allah, they have no protectors. Nations get what they deserve. And this goes both ways. When people change for the better, Allah facilitates and such people will have an improvement. And if people do not work for this change, there will be no change. So this is what Peter Drucker used to say, change is a very difficult thing. Peter Drucker, he's considered to be a guru on change management. He says change is a very difficult thing. And there's a saying which says, be the change that you want to see. You bring about that change in your life. It is He who shows you lightning, causing fear and hope, and brings up heavy clouds. And the thunder exalts His purity with His praise, and so do the angels out of His awe. And He sends thunderbolt and strikes with it whom He wills, while they dispute about Allah, and He is mighty in His grip. You can see the power and might of one thunderbolt. I don't know if you have seen ever lightning strike, what a powerful that is. And imagine the power of Allah. This is nothing, not even a pale reflection of the power of Allah. Read about the clouds, millions of gallons. Try lifting 1 gallon of water and walking, 1 block away. And it's millions of gallons of water floating on top of our head at minus temperatures without freezing, traveling thousands of miles, then falling gently on the earth just the right side of the drop so that it doesn't destroy life. Is it happening by its own? Look at the water cycle, how the clouds are formed. To Him alone is the true prayer, and those who call upon others, deities besides Allah, do not respond to them at all, except as one who stretches his hand towards water, that it may reach his mouth, but it will not reach it, and the prayer of the disbeliever is only in error. First part of this, to Him belongs the true prayer. We must pray with consciousness. That's the adab of dua. Be attentive, be attentive. Pray only to Allah. Pray only to Allah. There is nothing you will get from a mazar. Nothing you are going to get from the grave. There is no person, there is no symbol we need to pray to. Don't call the powerless. Calling the powerless is the example given in this ayah it's calling water. Come to me, quench my thirst, O water. Will the water come to quench my thirst? No matter how many times we call water, it will not come to quench our thirst. And the same is these gods. These gods are powerless. They will not do anything, no matter how much we call them. وَلِلَّهِ يَسْجُدُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ طَوْعًا وَكَرْهًا وَظِلَالُهُمْ بِالْغُدُوِّ وَالْآصَالِ. This is an ayat of sajda, and when this ayat is recited, whatever you are doing, just bow down and do a sajda to Allah. And to Allah prostrates whatever is in the heavens and in the earth, willingly or unwillingly, and so do their shadows in the morning and in the afternoon. So Quran says everything that Allah has created, maybe we feel that it has life or maybe it is lifeless, everything humbles itself in front of Allah. And from the mightiest creation of this universe to the smallest creation in this earth, everything humbles itself in front of Allah. And that's the reason why this is an ayat of sajda, so that we can establish this contact with our Creator. Say, who is the Lord of the heavens and the earth? Say, Allah. Say, have you then taken besides as protector those besides Him, which possess no power to cause benefit or harm, even to themselves? Say, is the blind same as the seeing, or is darkness same as light, or have they attributed Allah partners who create like His creation, so that the creation of each seemed similar to them? Say, Allah is the creator of all things, and He is the one, the prevailing. He sends down water from the sky, and valleys overflow according to their capacity, and the torrent carries the rising foam. From that ore which they heat in the fire, desiring ornaments and utensils, is a foam like it. That is how Allah depicts truth and the untruth. As for the foam, it vanishes, being cast off, while that which is good of mankind remains on the earth. In this way, Allah presents the parable. Example of a froth being given, the foam that rises on water when water is flowing, there's a froth that is there, but it settles down very quickly. It is worthless. Even if it looks a lot, it's like a swell. It seems huge. The same way opposition to Islam comes, it's like a swell. It like a foam on water. It settles down very quickly. And the other example is there of the metal, and it says that when you heat the metal in fire, desiring ornaments and utensils, there's a foam also on it. You know, the dirt of the metal that rises up on the top, the impurities of the metal. When a metal is put through a furnace, the impurities of the metal will rise on the top, and then they are removed, and what remains behind is the purity. It's a similar thing for a believer. The believer will go through these trials and through the tribulation. He will have his days of furnace also. And this is a way to purify people. Allah purifies people, a moment like this. So for a moment, in order to get rid of his weaknesses, Islam gets rid of this purification process. A moment when he goes through that, his weaknesses he will get rid of them. And then Islam will get rid of the munafiqs also. The scum will come on the top and it is removed. But what is left behind, that is more important. That is pure metal. And that is for the protection and the ornamentation of this deen. So we look at the last ayat of Surah Ra'd. So this is the ayah from Surah Ra'd, the last for this evening. لِلَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمُ الْحُسْنَى وَالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَسْتَجِبُوا لَهُ لو أن لهم ما في الأرض جميعا ومثله معه لافتدوا به أولئك لهم سوء الحساب ومأواهم جهنم وبئس المهاد. For those who obey their Rabb, there is the best reward, and for those who did not respond to Him, if they had all that is in the earth and the like of it, they offer it for ransom. Those will have the worst reckoning, and their abode is hell, and a wretched is a resting place.
So what this ayat is really saying is, if you obey Allah, you have the best of the reward, but those who do not respond to it, well, it's their funeral. They may give anything in return as ransom. It will not be accepted, and their resting place is a very wretched place. So we must remember, we must spend a part of our time, we must spend part of our energy, a part of our wealth for the deen of Allah. And we must pray to Allah that Allah makes our hisab easy. He takes easy accountability from all of us. So barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim wa nafana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim.